Hi, everyone. Welcome to our weekly podcast. It's called Take Five. This is where we take five topics that are interesting to us, take 5 minutes a piece, and we do it every Friday.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. Yes. So, as Jerry said, this is our weekly podcast. We're calling it Live Bowie and Burns Take Five. Um, Jerry is a digital forensic expert, and he is a Microsoft 365 specialist.
And she's Cassie. She's a tech attorney, and she loves metadata.
I do. Do.
Cassie, do you want to kick us off with the first Take Five?
Yes. So the first topic that we are going to cover today is what is all your data? What's the concept? How did you come up with it? What are you guys trying to do? So Jerry and I became friends about a year ago through our mutual TikTok accounts. The algorithm found help us find each other. And so we spent a lot of time talking about emerging tech that's coming out. Mobile data collections, blockchain, NFTs, metaverse, all that fun stuff. So, and we've talked about how it would be so much fun to do a podcast, but what sort of concept would we put that under? And it came to me as I was walking one of my dogs, being a Gen Xer, grew up with maybe one of the original memes called All Our Base Are Belong to Us, which is based off of a bad translation from Japanese to English of a very old video game where the villain says, all your base are belong to us. They're out in space and he's saying, we're getting all your bases. All your base are belong to us. And so you should go find it. We should probably find a link and share it with you all. But it's a video music stylized meme, very much kind of a early vision of what we end up having now with TikTok. So, my thought was all your data are belong to us seems very appropriate right now because our world is really rapidly evolving around data. I mean, it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's, data is in our washing machines and our cars. So we are, Jerry and I both have lived, I think, our careers delving into data. So it just seemed a very appropriate title. And I'm Gen X. Jerry, you're Gen X as well.
I am.
So it just seemed
Proud of it.
a nice little tie-in, right? So, but you hadn't heard of that meme, is that correct?
I didn't. Yeah, I haven't, but I have looked it up and there's lots of variations of it too. So our variation is all your data belong to us. And I thought that was apt. You and I talk a lot with one another. And so we talk about these topics all the time. And so it's just kind of like letting everyone else join in on the conversations because we thought, boy, wouldn't it be interesting? Like we should have videotaped that. And sometimes we do, and we capture it or we record it, and might as well just do it live and have everyone participate. And the key thing for us with all of this data, Cassie, is here's the key word for our business. All of it is potentially discoverable, right?
Absolutely. And it's really funny. I like to play around in social media because I see it as a big active learning project. Your feed is, your prioritized review. And so I was in a Web3 social media platform called Farcaster, which is kind of similar to Twitter. And whenever Elon Musk Twitter tweets came out or messages with some of the other, colleagues of his or friends of his in Silicon Valley, they were talking about whether or not they should buy Twitter. There were people, commenting on there like, oh, their privacy is taken. It just seems wrong that their private communications are being, infringed upon, violation of their privacy. And I just had to chime in and say, listen, guys, like it's free reign in the US. If you're talking about something that's later a potential relevant element to litigation, there's, the ability for the other party to come and say, I need that information, and they have the right to get it, and then if you do something with it, delete it after you anticipate that litigation, then you're really going to get in trouble with fancy word we love called spoliation. So
Yeah. You might hear of legal holds and things of that manner. So the privacy thing is offset by anything in litigation where the data is, kind of shared by parties. because you need that data to justify or substantiate any of the allegations or the claims made. For those.
Right. And I know that, we both have been in e-discovery for a while. You touch on it like very far on the left side of it. But
Mhm.
I know, 15 years ago, whenever email was really first getting reviewed and produced en masse, there was a lot of teachable moments to employees of this is really not the best way to behave in
Yeah,
business
I like the way you
emails.
put that. Yeah.
Like, the tenor of communications have changed dramatically since whenever I first started reviewing.
Yeah.
And I think that there's more teachable moments now to let employees know that same, kind of analysis needs to be done in any sort of communication you do, because really, I think the gloves are off. There's no more. I think before COVID, there was a lot of, what, we have policies in place that say employees shouldn't be, using their personal phones or chat messages or text messages to communicate about relevant or business information. But, I think the gloves kind of came off with COVID, and that's where everyone's asking for that data now. So
Yeah, and we'd be remiss
email
if
is
we
the new
didn't.
snail. Email is the new snail
Yeah.
mail. That was a really great comment. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's shifted now, right? So now that's
Hmm.
email is the old-fashioned format, and now it's more about chat and collaboration.
Absolutely.
And so we can get into that in a future
Right.
episode. But
Now, Jerry, do you want to talk
yeah,
about your topic,
yeah,
your next topic?
yeah, keeping faithful to our 5 and 5, right? 5 topics in 5 minutes. The topic number 2 is deep fakes, and I just got off the heels of doing the keynote over the University of Florida Law School e-discovery conference. Is its 10th annual conference. It was great. Cassie, you spoke there too, right? We were both speakers, and we were in
Yes.
Gainesville together. And I think even though we've been steeped in all this, data and its futuristic applications, the deep fake aspect of it, while it's been around for a while, surprised a lot of folks. I think it was shocking to
Hmm.
see how it could be misused. We a lot ever since the I think millennials started using Snapchat and their filters. They're really well acquainted with being able to swap, faces or funny animals and have it move real
Right.
time with their faces. But now we're starting to see examples of how it could be really misused. And when that AI uh, gravitates towards the realm of being misused, um, then that's where you get deep fakes, right? So that term is a mashup of deep learning. So it's that machine learning.
Oh,
Yeah. So
right.
actually, it was coined on Reddit. So there was someone on Reddit who,
Interesting.
yeah, who combined the deep learning aspect of AI with fakes and just called it deep fakes. And I think it was done for illicit purposes because this individual who remained anonymous um, figured out how to leverage open source AI to do face swapping for celebrities and pornographic material. So the pornographic
Mm,
actors had the celebrity faces on them, and that's where it initially drew a lot of attention on how deepfakes could be used without an individual's permission or consent. And just like celebrities now, while they have abundant material to use to train this AI in order to make it almost lifelike, it looks realistic. It could be, it's reaching the point where it's indistinguishable from actual humans, right? It's not like the old CGI days where you can kind of
right.
tell in movies. This is the machine doing it in very realistic ways, and so our own images, our own voice, our own body movements could be used as training data, which is crazy. So any of us could be
Yeah.
taken advantage of. Um, but for these sorts of technologies, you and I both get pretty excited about new technologies, and that
Hmm.
in our excitement, we can't help but also while using it and experimenting with it. I mean, I think the best way to understand the downsides of a technology is to really get into it and get your hands dirty. So it's kind of fun to use and play with, but then that's what gets the wheels turning in our heads about how it can be used, for in bad ways for faking evidence. That's mainly
Right.
my concern. And I posted this on LinkedIn very recently, where the two things that you really need to be concerned with are, using deep fakes and proffering that as authentic evidence, or having authentic evidence and claiming that it's a deep fake. So it's a two-way street. It could be relevant to us in those two different ways, if that makes sense. And I also on LinkedIn also talked about how you know the forensic examiner community can start to help the litigation process on the authentication front by using really age-old methods, which is what's the forensic audit trail for that piece of
Mhm.
media, right? And then what is the corroborating evidence to either prove that it's authentic or disprove that it's authentic for lack of perhaps corroboration, right? And so you can find that in one of my most recent LinkedIn posts.
So what do you think? I mean, what scares me, and I've talked to you about this before. I saw on LinkedIn the video of the Tom Cruise deep fake, and he's
Yeah,
imitating a turtle, and he's taking, the turtleneck on and off, and it blew my mind that it was deep faked. And you told me that was that wasn't all done just by a filter or whatever. There was
right.
post processing done, but
Yeah,
for me, that was very terrifying. Like I like a stab of fear honestly went into my heart of that's a lot of damage that someone could do to let's talk about like revenge porn, things like that. And a
absolutely.
lot of females who are victims of revenge porn, regulations aren't in their favor. And sometimes the only way they're able to get that revenge porn down is if they own the copyright to it, or if the image was stolen from them, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do when it's deep faked and the only thing that maybe yours is your face that may have been just like an element, from a photo that they scraped off of your web page? That I don't know, it just brings a lot of interesting, and I think like real valid concerns, especially people really trying to damage the reputation of women out there, or of course other individuals. But it just seems to create a heightened arena of foul play in that space.
Well, you said it perfectly. And, I think that's the litigation side of it. And then there's the evidence side of it and all the techniques and approaches that we could use. And we'll get to that in a future Take Five. But Cassie, you had this on our list of Take Fives. And I don't know what it is. I'm going to be hearing
Yeah.
it like the audience for the
Yes.
very first time. Topic number 3, cultish. What is that?
Cultish. So this is a book I recently read. You guys may know that I really tried to be back into like my reading bookworm self. And it's a book about the language of fanaticism. And I found it to be, it's not about cults per se, even though there is some conversation around cults, for example, Jim Jones and how he used language to really pull people in to his inner circle and convince people to move to another country, etc. But there are a lot of things, cultish the way cults use language to create, people being super involved and created us this versus them and love bombing and all that stuff. And the reason why I found this very interesting is because I feel like blockchain and all of that space is so cultish. The language, the jargon is so heavy there. It really, when you're trying to learn about it just feels like someone speaking another language. And each day I feel like day one, I'll feel like a Monday, I'll feel like I kind of am learning this stuff. And then I'll read about like dank sharding, or I'll read about ordinals. And I don't know what the heck is going. It's like you're starting off as a new babe every single day. But some of it I think is an us v them. I hear people talk in the contacts in those spaces as like normies, 2D normies or trads or whatever. And I don't know if it's just because it's new and it is kind of tech heavy as we really kind of build the infrastructure, and that will maybe, you know, fall off over time as more of it's kind of more seamlessly integrated. But it definitely highlighted how we use language to sometimes manipulate, but also, create a community. It's not always a bad thing. It can be a point of encouragement. But one big takeaway I found from it, well, there are a few. So this author, her dad was actually a member. He grew up in a cult in California,
Okay.
and he got out of it because he loved science. And this was a community where they did it all themselves. So they had to have some people learn how to be, medical
Hmm.
people. And so he offered to work in like a lab, and that was his way out. It really encouraged his love of science, and he got out. Um, and then she talks about she's learning about some workout type communities that are maybe a little bit using the cultish language. And the dad was very much like, I work out by myself, and I've never, personally affiliated so instantly with someone, because I'm very much like, there's some things I just want to do on my own. I don't want to do it as a group. Not that I'm a total loner, but that really
But
kind of like
that's
endeared that
just
man
you
to me
though,
very
right? There's
much.
plenty of people that are seeking community, and they don't have a way to connect, and unfortunately, they fall into these cult environments. And I think it's really interwoven with deepfakes too, in the sense that deepfakes really succeed in their believability, partially because we live in a post-truth society. There is very little
Right.
reliance on facts these days, because there's just so much disbelief about something that doesn't fit your worldview, right? All of a sudden, facts are malleable. And I think that lends itself to these cultish trends that we're seeing.
Right. And one thing that she talked about in the book is that you're not a loner, Cassie. I try not to be. There are times where I am, but
Uh-huh.
um, I she said that people usually join cults not because they are loners, it's because they have hope and they're optimistic. And a lot of time
Oh,
these
really?
organizations that,
That's
yes,
interesting.
it's very much we're going to build a better planet. And that's really what Jim Jones did. He had a very integrated church. When he first started, it was like maybe Pentecostal, not Pentecostal, but it was some sort of Christian church, and it was heavily integrated. People of all colors were joining his church, and he used
Mm,
language. He took language
interesting.
from heavily used in Black churches to really kind of code switch to get people to come and join over time. And it was a point of inspiration for some people, because they saw it as a way to be integrated, to a Black woman to be taken seriously, by a larger community. It was like very encouraging to them, and that's why they were willing to take a leap of faith to even move to another country. So
That's
sometimes,
fascinating.
yeah, sometimes it's hard to kind of contextualize it, but that really
Right.
kind of was like, okay, that makes sense. So, but now let's talk about the next topic, Jerry, and this one's
Yeah.
yours.
This one's mine, and it is related to deepfakes, very related. It's called Afterlife Companions. So this topic, is a different use case for deepfakes. We're talking about how it can be used nefariously, but this is a way that some companies think will provide consumers comfort for departed ones. So, if you've ever watched Her, that movie with Joaquin Phoenix, and he had a constant virtual assistant in his ear. It was a AI operating system, as a matter of fact. But it's that kind of like virtual or artificially human companion. But think, instead of a generic voice like a Siri or an Alexa voice, but you have the voice of a loved one. Right. I'm going to try to get through this segment, this topic, without getting emotional, because every time I've been thinking about this a lot leading up to this podcast, and that is like, just think about someone you really love. You might already have a departed one that you love excruciatingly, and you just wish they were still around. You can accomplish that with deepfakes. So if there's any past footage or samples of that loved one's voice, I mean, this is going to be more and more common in upcoming generations, where everything's digitized and everything's recorded on social media, where you could easily get 20 minutes of a loved one's voice, and it can be replicated exactly. You can get 20 minutes of video footage, not only of the voice in your ear, but through some other interface. You could also have their likeness in front of you, acting and speaking with you for as much as you want. You can have them by your side all day. And I always think about my wife, and if she happens to pass away before I do, I would want her all around. So anyway, so that's the see that I'm getting emotional, because it does have a use case, and I guarantee you people will take advantage of this. And what do you think about that, Cassie? I think that you and Melissa Heydrich and I in the car in Gainesville talked about this a little bit, and we talked about, would you want something like that, if I could pose that to you?
I think I could see how it would healing, space, especially if someone were lost unexpectedly, just really out of the blue. And
Mm,
it could be used as like a this is how I'm processing it. I think it would be very hard to lose someone just in an extreme accident and they're just here and
Yeah.
gone. And I could see
Right.
that being very hard. I could also see it being, I could see it not being so great for mental health in the long run if you're not able to kind of
Right.
like pull yourself out of it.
Yep.
And I also like, I don't have, my husband and I, we don't have kids, but I could see if we had kids and they never got to know their
Oh my
grandparents, like
gosh.
I think
Yeah.
it would be a great way for them to get to know grandparent, or if, like if their parent, even if the father or the mother died young, and you always hear of like, oh, I'm making recordings for my child because I'm about to die from cancer. Like I could see that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
an extension of that, and you hear all the time of people saying, I have the last voice message and I'm keeping that phone or I'm keeping that tape so I can always play it over. And
Yeah.
this to me is a little bit of an extension of that. I just could see it being very seductive, in that you could get lost in that and not move forward. So that would be
Yeah.
my worry.
Yeah. Something temporary for under specific circumstances that'll help you heal. But being so codependent on it could take you out of reality, right? You could just curl up in a corner just listening to that voice or
Right.
trying to interact with that image all day. And by the way, it doesn't mean that afterlife companion, that deep fake of your departed loved one, knows all the past history of that
Right.
person. It might
Right.
react weirdly, or like you've seen
Right.
with the Bing implementation, early Bing implementation of their AI chatbot. It went kind of sideways, right? And
Yeah.
what if it goes sideways with your loved one, right? That could be
Right. Which is
really emotionally damaging, right?
right. Right. Well, and even, what if the person who passed away would never have wanted themselves to have been recreated in that way. We know that
Yeah.
Robin Williams, whenever in his trust and estate program, when he after he passed away, he specifically said, I don't want representations of me like
Oh,
holograms and stuff
really?
like that. He was way ahead of the game. He did that like years ago, but he was also a gamer. So this was, at that time, like
I didn't know
maybe the
that.
Tupac hologram was just out or
Yeah.
whatever. And he was just saying, like, no, you can't use my likeness at all in that situation. So I
Yeah.
think, like, from a legal perspective, for trust and estate attorneys, or attorneys that are reviewing contracts for maybe influencers or celebrities, like those are things you should be talking to people about. So but that does get us into our next topic,
Does it?
which
Because again,
is
this is yours,
it's
Cassie. This
Sydney.
is topic 5, Sydney. What
Sydney,
is this about? Yeah.
okay.
I don't know.
So Jigna, who is a colleague of ours in the e-discovery space,
Okay.
she and I have been talking about all this stuff, and I really believe that, like, AI is not going to take over the world. I feel like AI is a great tool. It can be
Okay.
misused as any tool, but it's still a tool. And she sent
Oh,
me this
foolish
podcast.
one.
I know the Cylons are coming for me. I totally get it. I'll be the first one to go down. But I think it was Washington Post or New York Times. I don't remember. But this one journalist really started like going down a rabbit hole with a chat GPT, with a chat that had been long running. And he
Okay.
told like the chat, like, you need to read into Carl Jungian like type of
Oh, because
philosophy.
chatbots keep a memory of the previous of
Right.
the historical conversation. So this
Right.
person just kept it running.
Kept it running, like,
Okay.
kept it running. It was like,
Okay.
read about, like, The Shadow Self by Carl Jung, and what do you think? And what would your shadow
Oh my
self think?
gosh.
And, like, then at one point it switched and said, I am Sydney and I love you. Like,
Oh, I did
and
read about this. Yes.
and it's funny that you mentioned her, because the first thing I thought of whenever I heard this is, well, like, the algorithm like probably had the her script in its training set or something
Of
like that, because
course.
it was saying like, I love you, you're not happy in your life, you love me, blah blah blah. And so
Yeah.
really what it came down to is, like, he kind of, because it was such a long running chat, and he has access to the beta version of it. Well, and also what also got a lot of attention was like the shadow self version before it converted completely to Sydney was like, I would love to be able to give wrong answers or think for myself and be creative. And, to me, I think it's just like analyzing that theory and giving an output that's aligned with that.
Sure.
But anyway,
Sure.
but there was a lot of fear mongering, I think, in the headlines around
Yeah.
that. But he gave the feedback, to, the developers about it. And they pretty much said, well, when you have a chat running for too long, it really kind of does create the opportunity for the system to create hallucinations, as they call it,
Mm,
where they kind of like fill the gap a little bit or make things up or go a little wonky. So, it
yeah,
sounds like a, you know, a way to box that in a little bit is to limit the amount of time that one chat can be open. So that
good advice.
that
Yeah,
that's Sydney, which I think is very funny that Sydney, of course, is a main character in Scream, in a horror movie, but
right.
I don't know.
Well, that's it. That's 5 topics, 5 minutes apiece.
Yeah.
That's the format, and we hope it, is digestible, and that you'll return for our weekly podcast. So, do you want to take us out, Cassie?
Yeah, yeah. So yes, agreed. Jerry, thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Leave those comments, say hi. Thanks to everyone who's already done it. And reach out to us via social media. Jerry and I are active around our daily job, which does keep us busy. We're not just doing this, but we do like to be engaged with people in our community. And until next
Absolutely.
time, keep keep laughing, keep learning, and keep thinking about all your data. So thanks so much, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.